Hello and welcome back to the She is Courageous podcast. Now this week is an interesting episode. I'm actually recording when I wasn't planning on recording, and I'm recording because I've had some realizations this weekend and I want to share them with you. And look, this is the She is Courageous podcast. The She is Courageous podcast, the She is Courageous collective is born out of a place of knowing, learning, realizing and knowing with every part of me that courage is the key. And a courageous mindset specifically, really aligns. I am a business mindset coach. I love working with women in business, their own or someone else's. But what I really love is helping them realize that their mindset is the key to their success. And that their mindset, in its current form, our mindset in its current form, is a result of everything that we've ever learned, lived and experienced. And I share in this podcast huge amounts of insight into my life, right? Because I want to keep it real. I've always said really honestly to all of you, I do not have all my shit sorted. I have a coach. I have had therapy. I am learning about me all the time. And every time I do anything for my clients, quite frankly, I have light bulbs too. And I think it's one of the reasons that you'll listen to this. It's definitely one of the reasons that clients come and work with me, because they tell me, you're real, Shelley. You don't pretend to be perfect. You share lived experience. And that's what I want to do. And so these episodes, I bring in guests with real life stories. Even the episodes that are a bit more structured, a bit more educational, if you like, they're still coming from a place of me learning this in my own life. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing it with all of you. Now, you might be like, what is she waffling on about right now? Well, this week, I want to talk to you, and the title is a little bit of it's a teaser, but it's a hook that is so true. And it's this realization that I've had around I've been lying my whole life. Now, that in itself feels quite uncomfortable to say, because I am one of the most honest people I know. Honesty is a core value to me. My clients, my friends, my family, my husband will tell you I am probably one of the most honest people you'll ever meet. But I've had a realization, and this is all about mindset, and it is that I've been lying, not to hurt anyone, but to protect myself. So if I set the scene a little bit in terms of like the link that this is to the She is Courageous podcast and everything we stand for in terms of courageous mindset, this is about masks, labels, and of course, courage. Now, let me give you some context as to where this has come from. Recently, I played crazy golf. Now, if you follow me on the socials, you may be aware that a couple of months ago, I suggested to my husband that we have a go at what I'd found on Instagram called alphabet dating. So I'd seen someone on Instagram who talked about alphabet dating, and they were sharing some of the things that her and her husband had been up to. And I was like, what a brilliant idea. We go out for dinner all the time. We have date nights. But I'll be honest, those date nights have become a bit of a pattern. We go out for a drink, we go out for some lovely dinner, we eat in amazing restaurants. I know this is a first world problem, right? But I'd seen this alphabet dating and I thought, what a great idea to get us doing some different stuff and maybe things that we haven't done before. So we recently played crazy golf because we are on sea, okay? We've been bowling, we've been to Abu Dhabi, now we've been and played crazy golf. Now, this isn't really about the crazy golf, but I need to give that context because it's what triggered, if you like, this realization. So we played crazy golf, and quite frankly, I was terrible at it. We went with a couple of friends that we have, my friend and her husband. Now, my husband has played golf a lot in his life, not a lot recently, but he played golf a lot when he was younger. Her husband plays a lot of golf. I don't know if she plays. I think she may have been on the golf course a couple of times. They were all okay. I mean, my husband was very good. Her husband was very good. She wasn't brilliant, but she was better than me. I was the worst. But here's something else that I realised for myself. I've only played crazy golf once in my life. About 20 years ago, on a fun day out with the girls, there was probably wine. Well, actually, I wasn't that classy back then. We're probably talking about beer. But there was definitely alcohol, and it was just for fun. I don't even think we kept score, if I'm honest. I've only played crazy golf once. I have never been on a golf course with a golf club in my hand. I've never played golf. I've never been taught to play golf. I don't know how to do it if there's any skill involved in this. But I didn't say that to anybody. And I was the one that organised this, right? And so I just went along. I went to have fun. But I was the worst. And there was a few giggles at my expense. And this isn't about that, okay? So this isn't about, oh my God, I can't believe they treated me that way. This is about what it brought up for me. Because what it actually made me realise the following day when I was talking to my husband about it was, this is not about golf. This is definitely not about crazy golf. This is about a lifelong pattern. Now, let me give some context. I always talk about how our mindset, I've said it already today, our mindset is a culmination of everything that we've learned, lived, experienced, seen, everything. And everything that we've kind of compiled in our mind creates our beliefs about ourselves, the world around us, and our place in it. But fundamentally, when it comes to ourselves, that is all about everything we've ever experienced, everything we've ever seen, everything we've ever done. Okay? Now, childhood context. We weren't that kind of family, and I just did air quotes. And if you're not watching on YouTube, you'd be like, what is she talking about? We didn't go out for family days out and things. I wasn't a really hard done by child, okay? We had a roof over our head, there was food on the table, we had clothes on our back, we weren't living on the poverty line, but we weren't really a family. I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of our family, but we didn't do family days out. We didn't, have these wonderful Christmas days with family games in the evening. I didn't have lots of hobbies outside of school. And I think some of that was because we didn't have huge amounts of money when I was little. I think some of that was because our situation was such that it wasn't easy for me to be able to do those things, not just because of money, but I had younger sisters. And this is not a blame game, it's a reality, okay? So we didn't do lots of things. I didn't do lots of things that gave me exposure and experience of lots of things. That just wasn't who we were. Basically, I spent my life at school. I had younger sisters and I helped out a lot with them. And I spent my life, we lived in this cul-de-sac. It was a bit like Neighbours in the 80s and 90s. And I spent my life outside in the cul-de-sac playing with the other kids. And it was imaginative play, not skill building play. And I see now that there are gaps because I didn't do certain things as a younger person, as a child, and therefore I didn't do them as an adult. I'm going to come to that in a second. But I'll give a really good example. I can't swim. I mean, I can, but barely, right? I never learned to swim as a child. I didn't have swimming lessons as a baby. I didn't have swimming lessons as a toddler. I didn't have swimming lessons as a young child. The first swimming lessons were part of the school curriculum. And I didn't take to it. I didn't have lessons or the opportunity to go swimming outside of that. So what I actually started to do was avoid. So what I did was, because everybody else had learned to swim and I was embarrassed, I found ways to not go to swimming classes. I was always missing swim class in my secondary school. We didn't have swimming every single week. It was like a rota basis because of the pool at the school. I'm remembering all this now. And I probably faked letters to my PE teacher. I got out of swim class in secondary school all the time because I was embarrassed that I couldn't swim. And it was easier to avoid it than to face the fact that I couldn't swim and I was needing to learn when everybody else could already do it. I never learned to play an instrument as a child. I've always wanted to, but I've never done anything about it because ultimately I'm embarrassed that I can't really read music and I never learned to play an instrument. I didn't really have creative hobbies. Guess what? You've probably heard me say I'm not particularly creative. This is about my realisation. It's not a woe is me call out, look at all the things I didn't do as a kid. But what I realised through a very innocent game of crazy golf was this. I have a label that's been put around my neck and I have willingly worn for a really long time about being very competitive. Now, you might have heard me talk about this. I use it quite often in my webinars, in workshops I've done. I've talked about being called a bad loser when I was younger. And I have talked about kind of creating this competitive mask. And that I've played that card. Don't get me wrong, I have been competitive. I have been a bad loser. Who hasn't, by the way? But it became my label. And so I avoided a lot of things because I was seen as competitive and I didn't want others to see that behaviour. Or I was seen as a bad loser and I didn't want others to see that behaviour. Do you know what the truth is? I am 49 years of age. I am actually not that competitive. Like, I am driven and ambitious, but I'm not actually really competitive. I want to do things well. I want to do well for me. I couldn't give a damn about other people. I couldn't care less if someone else is actually better than me. But I do want to do things well. I want to be good at certain things. And so this label of like competitive has just become my label. In fact, when I spoke to a friend yesterday, she said, do you know what? I don't think I've ever even seen you be competitive. I just have always known that you are, because that's what everyone says. That's how labels become beliefs that become your truth. And here's what I realised this weekend. It was easier to wear that label than actually admit the real truth. It's been easier to be labelled competitive. It's been easier to be labelled a bad loser. It's been easier to say I don't want to do something or feign a lack of interest than to admit I can't, I don't know how to. To admit to the embarrassment of maybe only ever doing something once and therefore knowing I'm not very good. Or maybe not having done something at all. So I became the master in my late teens and early 20s of hiding that I couldn't swim. I went on holidays with friends. I got in the pool. I just never went into the deep end. No one knew I couldn't swim. I had fun, but I would just say I wasn't interested if they decided to play, I don't know, pool volleyball and it was going to get like splashy or in the deep end. Can you see how this happens? You take on a mask and you wear it because it's easier than facing into the truth. So over time, my masks, my labels, I'm not creative, I'm not sporty, I'm not the kind of person who does that. Or the truth that I've now realised is I was probably embarrassed to say, well, I don't know how to. I never learned to. I never had a go at that. And the longer it goes on, the more you avoid and the worse it gets. The labels stick and you start to believe them. But actually, protecting myself has kept me small. Protecting myself has had me miss out on joy, experiences, learning. And what's really weird about this is in work and business, this is not what happens. In work, in my business, I have no issue with learning new stuff. I have no issue with not being very good at stuff. But interestingly, I do tend to push myself to learn on my own. And I've often talked about how I built a career on being the jack of all trades, the master of nothing. Because I've learned loads of stuff along the way, but I'm not particularly good at anything. And that really hit yesterday, and it stung quite a lot when I had this realisation that I'm actually not really good at anything. Now, I can take that as really negative, and I did for a while, and I'm probably still sitting with some of that, and I'm sharing this quite raw and quite quickly, because if this is helpful for anyone listening, then it's really important I share. That's what the She is Courageous podcast is about. It's about being courageous and sharing the truth. It's about being courageous and realising if you want to change your story, you can. This is not about sadness for what I haven't done. It is about sadness for who I've told myself I am or I'm not. So my realisation is that actually I have been lying to myself and to others. I have pretended I don't want to do something. But I've been doing it for so long. I've convinced myself I don't want to do things. I've convinced myself I'm not creative. I've convinced myself I don't want to be sporty. Like, I actually realised this morning, right, a really silly example, but let's go with it. Right, this is how, I just downplayed it, but it's important. So I didn't grow up in a world where rugby was on the TV. Like football, my dad loved football. We watched the football. I paid attention in the background. I kind of get the game of football. I didn't play. Girls didn't play football back then. But I get it, and I've watched, over the years when England have been in tournaments, I've absolutely watched. I've gone to the pub with my friends. I get it, okay? I can absolutely understand the game of football. Rugby, didn't grow up in a rugby world, and my husband did. And when we were first together, what I did was exactly this. I told him that I didn't really like rugby. I wasn't really a fan. Truth was, I didn't really understand the game. And I think I was embarrassed to tell him I didn't understand the game. And because it was important to him, I didn't want him to not like partake or enjoy it or still do his thing. So I just said, I'm not really into that. You carry on, I'm not really into that. And that is how subconscious that behaviour became for me. That wasn't done with anything other. That's what I do. That's what I do. I just go, oh no, I'm just not really into it. You carry on. Now, a few years ago, he explained to me how rugby, I'm still not that interested into it. I'm still not that into it. That's not really the point, is it? The point is, I finally admitted I didn't really understand the game, and I wanted him to share that with me, and I didn't need to be embarrassed about that. Unfortunately, the penny didn't drop then that it's happening in other places. And it's so subtle, or it's become my lifelong pattern, that actually I didn't even realise what I was doing. Is this making any sense? And you can't answer me right now because this is a podcast. I really hope it is. I really hope that it's making some sense. Because if it is, and it's resonating for you, here's what I really want to get across today. We don't have to hide anything. And I know I say it all the time, like you don't have to be good at everything. You don't have to, you've got to start somewhere. Well, I'm just being really honest with you all and being really courageous to say, haven't been living by all of that and I hadn't realised. That's how deep some of this can go. That is how under the surface some of our mindset is. It's just playing out and you don't even realise what you're doing. So here's what I'm going to do. From here on in, I am going to do my absolute best to choose total honesty. And I am a really honest person, but I mean honesty with myself. I'm going to be okay with saying, I've never done this before, but I want to. I'm going to be okay with saying, I don't know how to do this, but I want to. Because actually what I've done is struggled alone on so many of these things, or taken myself out of the game altogether, literally and metaphorically. I don't have an issue with not being good at something, but it turns out I might have had more of an issue with myself than I realised at telling other people that I'm not good at something. Real courage is about honesty in action. Real courage is about not waiting to be better, but just doing it anyway. And I know that. I say that all the time. And I've had a realisation that actually I need to be more courageous. So this isn't about crazy golf. This is simply about me realising I've been wearing a label that not only hasn't served me, that not only isn't true, but that has had me playing small and lying to myself. So I guess I'd love you to just think about, are you wearing a mask to protect yourself? Because not all the things we do are toxic positivity, big smiles. Sometimes we're wearing a mask that is potentially hurting us even further. It's self-sabotage at its best stroke worst. Where might you be wearing a mask to protect yourself? What labels have stuck, have you held on to, that don't actually belong to you anymore? What opportunities have you avoided out of a fear of embarrassment? Not fear of failure, not fear of judgment, but genuine embarrassment for you. Because that's what mine was. It wasn't about fear of failure. It was the embarrassment of admitting that I'd never, that I couldn't, that I hadn't learned. Because there was I guess there's judgment attached to that. I mean, all the fears are intrinsically linked, right? But it's almost this pressure I put upon myself that I should know how to. I should have learned somewhere along the line, or I should have done something about it before now. So with the help of this episode, what's something that you could admit honestly to yourself? What's one, maybe there's something that you'd like to try, even if you're terrible at it. Let me know if there is, because actually when I shared all of this with my husband, he said, like he listened and he was sensitive and he had to process it because he didn't quite get it, because that's not the world he comes from. Like he's tried so much in his life, and he's then actually quite good at quite a lot of it, because not only has he tried things because he had those opportunities, he's gone on to learn them properly. And he honestly spoke about how he'd taken so much of that for granted. But then he asked me, well, what do you want to do? I just should say, I did ballet and tap when I was younger, and actually I was pretty good at that. And I made a decision in my teens to give that up. But other than that, I didn't have hobbies and things. And I don't have a lot of hobbies now. The one thing I think I'm good at is my work. And so I guess I play into that and avoid where I've not learned for fear of embarrassment, blah, 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 blah. It's interesting, isn't it? It's just really interesting realization. So he asked me, well, is there something you really want to learn? And I didn't have an answer. I was like, I don't know. I suppose there's probably lots. But that's good because there's 26 letters in the alphabet and we're only on C for crazy golf. But actually, I can laugh now, but over the last 24, 48 hours, processing this has been quite a process because it's brought some stuff up. It had me thinking, I'm not good at anything because I've not allowed myself to be. Now, I don't believe that's the case. I do believe I have strengths and skills. But for a moment there, I was like, oh my God, I'm not actually good at anything. And then I was like, I'm only good at work. The only thing I'm any good at is my work. How sad is that? So I've gone through a bit of a journey over the last 24, 48 hours. And here I am now sharing it with you because I really hope that it can help you if you need it to. Masks protect us, but they also limit us. Labels stick, but they do not have to define us. And courage? Well, it's definitely not about being the best, and we all know that. But it is about being honest enough to try. So let me know what this has brought for you. Drop me a DM. If you don't want to kind of share this on the socials, I totally get it. But please do. Drop me a DM over on Instagram and let me know if this brought something for you. And we can chat it through together because, boy, has this been a light bulb for me in the last couple of days. And hey, stay tuned. D is next on the alphabet. Shall we do something I've never done before? Who knows? For now, I shall simply leave this with you. She is courageous. She is every single one of us. She is you.